Last night you dreamed. Maybe you don't remember. Most dreams disappear within a few minutes of waking, unless you write them down. But they were there. They always are. Humans dream every night, even when they can't remember it. This is a biological fact, confirmed by decades of neuroscientific research. During REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, the brain is almost as active as it is when you're awake. Eyes move, emotions fire, narratives unfold. But here's a question that seems simple. Did a prehistoric human, falling asleep by a fire in a cave 30,000 years ago, dream too? The answer is yes, unambiguously. The REM sleep mechanism didn't appear 30,000 years ago. It's far older. REM sleep is present in all mammals and many birds. Recent research has found something similar to REM sleep in reptiles as well, pointing to a common ancestor of amniotes approximately 320 million years ago. Mice dream, cats dream. Octopuses, according to a 2023 study in Nature, undergo something neurobiologically similar to REM states. Prehistoric humans dreamed, exactly as you do. This is not speculation. It follows from the fundamental biology of sleep. But here's what's really interesting. What did they do with it? Humans have always dreamed, but prehistoric people related to their dreams very differently. Let's start with neuroscience, with what we know for certain. Why do we dream at all? This remains one of the most debated questions in neurobiology. Several competing theories, each supported by evidence. The first, memory consolidation. During sleep, the brain transfers information from short-term to long-term memory. This happens especially actively during REM sleep. Research shows that people deprived of REM sleep have noticeably worse recall of new material. The second, emotional regulation. During sleep, the brain replays the day's events without the sharp surge of adrenaline. A kind of safe rehearsal. Emotional experience without physical consequences. This explains why, after a difficult day, dreams often replay whatever was weighing on you. The third, and most significant from an evolutionary perspective, is the threat simulation theory, proposed by Finnish neuroscientist Antti Revonsuo. Dreams are a survival simulator. That's how evolutionary neuroscience understands them. Revonsuo's argument, dreaming is an ancient biological defense mechanism, evolutionarily selected for its ability to repeatedly simulate threatening events. The logic? In the environment our ancestors inhabited, the Pleistocene, threats were constant. Predators, hostile groups, unpredictable nature. Rehearsing responses to threats in the safe environment of sleep gave an adaptive advantage. The evidence? The content of dreams worldwide is disproportionately loaded with threats. Most dreams, particularly anxious and nightmarish ones, involve pursuit, attack, danger, loss. Even in people living safe, modern lives, the brain keeps simulating threats that are relevant not to an office worker, but to a hunter in a Pleistocene savanna. This is not coincidence. It's an evolutionary mechanism that is still running. In 2023, a team from the University of Geneva and the University of Toronto published a study in Scientific Reports. Led by David Sampson, an evolutionary anthropologist at the University of Toronto, Mississauga, the researchers compared the dream content of two contemporary hunter-gatherer groups, the Hadza of Tanzania and the Bayaka of the Democratic Republic of Congo, with dream content from people in Western Europe and North America, Switzerland, Belgium, Canada. For the Hadza and Bayaka, dream narratives were collected over 2 months of fieldwork. The Western data came from previously published studies from 2014 to 2022. The results were striking. Hadza and Bayaka dreams contained significantly more threats: animal attacks, physical danger, conflict. This directly confirms Revonsuo's threat simulation theory. People living with higher real-world levels of danger use sleep more intensively to rehearse protective responses. But here's the paradox. Even though Hadza dreams contained more threats, the level of negative emotions in those dreams was noticeably lower than in Western participants. Their dreams more often ended with the threat being resolved rather than deepening. The key explanation? Hadza and Bayaka dreams were rich in social content. In the moment of danger within the dream, help arrived from group members. The dreams reflected what people actually relied on in real life: community. The Hadza and Bayaka dream about danger, but help always appears. This observation leads us to a broader question. How did prehistoric humans interpret their dreams? For us, a dream is a neurobiological process we can partially explain through science. For a human 30,000 years ago, a dream was something fundamentally different. There is not a single known human society, not one, however isolated, that treats dreams as mere brain noise. In every culture documented by anthropologists, dreams are understood as meaningful, as messages, as contact with another world. This is a remarkable universality, the same kind as the universality of music, religion, or language. Why? One answer, because the experience of dreaming genuinely is different. In dreams, people see deceased relatives who speak to them. They visit places that don't exist. They experience events that violate physical laws. For a person without a scientific framework, the only reasonable explanation is contact with another reality. And this interpretation had an enormous influence on the history of religion, shamanism, and human culture. No known culture treats dreams as mere brain noise. Shamanism, the oldest documented religious practice, was built on dreams as the primary instrument of connection with the spirit world. Michael Winkelman, an anthropologist who worked at Arizona State University, conducted a large-scale cross-cultural study of shamanism covering data from dozens of societies. His conclusion? Shamanic practices are documented in virtually every known hunter-gatherer society worldwide, in Siberia, Amazonia, Africa, North America, Australia. This is not cultural borrowing. It is an independently arising pattern. It points to deep biological roots. The same neurological architecture generates similar practices across completely different cultures. The shaman, across all these societies, performs similar functions: healer, mediator between people and spirits, keeper of group knowledge. And the shaman's primary instrument was an altered state of consciousness, neurobiologically close to what happens during REM sleep. What matters for our topic, sleep and dreaming occupy a central place in shamanic practice everywhere. The shaman entered altered states through trance, fasting, rhythmic dance, or psychoactive substances, and these states were understood as equivalent to dreaming: contact with another world, with spirits, with a source of knowledge. For many hunter-gatherer peoples, the shaman's dreams had practical significance. They determined where to hunt, when to go, who to heal, and how. The Cave of the Three Brothers in France. Around 15,000 years ago, approximately 13,000 BCE. On the wall, a being with stag antlers, a beard, and a horse's tail, in a movement resembling dance. One widely discussed interpretation, a shaman in trance. The trance state is neurobiologically similar to certain phases of sleep. The same deactivation of certain brain regions, the same sense of stepping outside the ordinary self. For prehistoric humans, the boundary between sleep and trance was probably blurred. Both states gave access to what couldn't be seen while awake. The shaman and the dreamer were doing the same thing, crossing the boundary between worlds. For prehistoric people, dreams were not private experience. They were a collective tool. What does all this tell us about the nature of dreaming? One joint answer from neuroscience and anthropology. Dreaming is an adaptive mechanism whose form is shaped by culture and social context. A Western person dreams of exams, social failure, loss of status. A Hadza person dreams of dangerous animals and community members arriving to help. A prehistoric shaman dreams of spirits pointing toward where to hunt. One biological machine, completely different content. The sleeping brain processes whatever matters most for survival in its specific social and ecological context. The difference between us and prehistoric humans is not what we dream, it's how we relate to it. We have learned to explain dreams neurobiologically, but we have lost something else: the collective dimension of dreaming, its social function, its capacity to bind a group around shared symbolic experience. We've learned to explain dreams, but we've forgotten how to work with them. A nightmare isn't a malfunction. It's an evolutionary training simulator stuck on repeat. Second, dreams of the dead. This is one of the most common and cross-culturally universal categories of dreaming. In every known society, people dream of deceased relatives. And in every society, this is experienced not as just a dream, but as a meeting. The neuroscientific explanation is clear. The brain stores detailed predictive models of people close to us: their voice, gestures, intonation, the way they answer questions. These are not simply memories. They are working simulations of another person that the brain uses to predict behavior in real life. After someone dies, these models remain active. The brain has no mechanism for automatically deleting them. During sleep, when external signals are absent and the filtering of consciousness is relaxed, they can manifest as vivid presences, speaking, acting, entirely real. For a prehistoric human with no neuroscientific model of memory, the only reasonable explanation was direct. The dead person came. They speak, they warn, they give advice. And this experience, not symbolic, not metaphorical, but literally felt as a real encounter, was available to every person in the group regularly throughout their entire life. It is precisely from this experience, universal, biologically grounded, that the concepts of ancestor spirits, the afterlife, and post-mortem existence arise. Not from an abstract fear of death, from a specific, repeated lived experience. At night, the person who is gone comes to me. The ancestor cult is one of the oldest and most persistent religious forms worldwide, and its foundation is the dream. The concept of ancestor spirits grew from the experience of meeting the dead in dreams. Third, controlled dreaming. Lucid dreams, the state in which a person knows they are dreaming and can direct the content, are known across cultures under many different names. In Tibetan Buddhism, the practice of dream yoga is one of the highest forms of meditation. The practitioner deliberately cultivates awareness within the dream, treating the dream's content as material for spiritual work. The tradition is over 1,000 years old. But the Tibetan tradition is not unique. The ability to enter lucid dream states is a central skill for shamans in many cultures. The shaman deliberately cultivated states of consciousness that are neurobiologically close to lucid dreaming, reduced external control while maintaining directed intention. Modern neuroscience confirms lucid dreaming is real. During a lucid dream, the prefrontal cortex, typically quiet during sleep, becomes active. Self-awareness switched on within the dream itself. Sleep lab research shows that lucid dreamers can transmit pre-agreed signals using eye movements while in REM sleep, proving they are simultaneously aware of their state and still dreaming. This is not mysticism. This is neurophysiology. How many thousands of years humans have worked with this deliberately, we don't know, but clearly a very long time. The fact that different cultures independently develop practices for navigating the dream state, from Tibetan monks to Siberian shamans, suggests this capacity is biologically encoded in us. Fourth, the most philosophical. What happens to our understanding of reality when we take seriously the fact that we spend roughly a third of our lives unconscious, and approximately a fifth of that time in a state neurobiologically indistinguishable from wakefulness? For prehistoric humans, this was not a rhetorical question. It was a practical and urgent problem. If a deceased uncle came in the night and said not to go hunting tomorrow, do you ignore that? If a deer spirit appeared in a dream and pointed in a direction, do you follow it? In conditions where every decision could cost a life and information was desperately scarce, any additional source of data had value. Dreams were that source. Not because people were superstitious, but because the sleeping brain really does work, processing information, identifying patterns, sometimes producing insights that are not available while awake. Modern science holds numerous examples of solutions that came in a dream. In Kekule's own words, it was in a dream that the idea of the ring structure of benzene came to him, the image of a snake biting its own tail. McCartney described dreaming the entire melody of Yesterday and spending several days unable to believe he had written it himself. This is not mysticism. It is a particular mode of brain function in which habitual constraints on thinking are loosened. Prehistoric humans didn't know neuroscience, but they knew sometimes a dream tells you something you cannot find while awake, and they used that. Prehistoric people used dreams as a source of information, and they were right. So, what do we know about the dreams of prehistoric humans? The mechanism, identical to ours. REM sleep, threat simulation, emotional regulation, memory consolidation. The content, richer in threats, richer in social interactions, more oriented toward resolution, based on data from hunter-gatherer societies. The interpretation, radically different. Dreams were contact with another world, messages, a collective resource of the group. The use, practical, for decisions, for healing, for locating game, for social cohesion, for building religious systems, legal codes, artistic traditions. Sleep was one of the most important tools of human culture, not because people were naive, but because sleep really is something more than the brain rebooting. And what we have largely lost, the collective and practical dimension of dreaming, is not progress, it's a loss. Most people today don't share their dreams publicly, don't discuss them with colleagues, don't make decisions based on them. Dreaming has become private, almost embarrassing, belonging to therapy or mysticism, not ordinary life. Among the Hadza and Bayaka, and almost certainly our ancestors, dreaming was part of the group's shared information space, a resource that belonged to everyone. We don't know whether we've lost something valuable, but neuroscience says the sleeping brain is doing something real and important. Perhaps it's worth beginning to listen again. And now the second question I'd like you to answer in the comments. Has a dream ever given you something? A solution to a problem, an answer you'd been searching for, a warning that turned out to be right? Write it down. I'm genuinely curious how common this experience actually is, because the science suggests it happens far more often than we tend to admit.